Good morning, Joseph. What will your first sequence of the day be?
Computer, load up Salaryman. Can you kick up the 4D, 3D, 3D3?
4D, 3D, 3D3, engaged.
Do we have any new sequences?
I have a beta sequence I've been working on. Would you like to see it?
Alright.
Hey Joe, I'm Tane, your latest archetype. I can't wait to entertain you.
Now, Tane I can get into. Is there any way to generate a pacifist Tane?
Not computing. Please repeat.
Pacifist Tane.
Warning, this is not suitable for meta. Are you sure?
Mm-hmm. Oh! I'm okay.
Excuse me, Joseph. Your fiancé is on the phone. It's an emergency.
I'll get it later. We have important work to do.
Hey everybody, Joseph Rothschild here, aka MBT, back again with another episode of 10-Minute Testing. You know, when you're as experienced as I am, there's not much left on this hell of an earth that excites you anymore. Sleeping in Saturdays in a 90-degree room, the miracle of life, the occasional SEMO comment on my videos. But still, nothing gets my motor running like Phantasm Spiral support. After years of silence, Konami has finally released a series of cards that synergize with non-effect monsters, the best news for pacifist players since the release of Pot of Extravagance. So, without further ado, I present Tianwei Phantasm Spiral. So, here's the list, and, hello again, old friend. As always, I'll give you a background about the archetype, a little bit of a discussion about what I hope the deck can do, and of course, the card by card. So firstly, for those of you that don't know, Phantasm Spiral is a deck that inevitably gets mentioned in every single Reddit thread about cheap decks for new players. I don't know why that is, since Pacifist Phantasm City has more screwy interactions than maybe any other card ever. There's no way to turn someone off of Yu-Gi-Oh! Faster than linking them a 40-page ruling document right before they start playing. Anyway, it's an archetype that, among other things, gets specific benefits from summoning normal monsters. Originally intended as an OTK strategy, its suite of powerful interruption traps and recurrent advantage from its associated field spell make it much more at home in a control shell. Demise Pacifist has been a long-time favorite of mine, but the rise of sticky decks that don't fold to two pieces of interaction has largely caused the card's demise. Enter Tianwei. Tianwei is a series of cards that benefit non-effect monsters. Now, if you're well-versed in the archaic mystical rules of Yu-Gi-Oh!, you may have noticed that I did not say normal monsters. That's because non-effect monsters are not normal monsters. They're non-effect monsters. Not to be confused, of course, with effect monsters that don't have effects like Cyber Harpy Lady, nor normal monsters, which are monsters without effects, but under a different classification. Got it? Anyway, Tianwei not only has a multitude of support for non-effect monsters, it also happens to synergize with worm monsters, which qualifies both the Pacifist Token and Mystery Shell Dragon for the deck. By using these two archetypes in tandem, we should be able to make a deck that fills in holes in the pacifist portion of the deck with extremely powerful tribal cards. Specifically, Vishuddha deals with monsters that resist Phantasm Spiral Battle, a long-time weakness of the strategy. Nahata deals with sticky monsters with over 2,000 attack, another choke point for pacifists, and Fist deals with evenly matched. So with that, let's get into the card by card. First, we're playing 3 Mystery Shell Dragon, a 4-star worm normal monster. After that is the only Tianwei dragon worth playing, Vishuddha, who can be banished from the hand or graveyard provided you have a non-effect monster to return a card to the hand. We're also on Nahata, who reduces an opponent's monster's attack by 1,500 via the same conditions at 1 because it's searchable. After that is 3 Pot of Extravagance, 3 Hollow Cycle of Dragons, which Foolish is a worm that adds 1 to hand if you control a non-effect monster, hence the 2 targets with different names. For field spells, we've got 3 Pacifist the Phantasm City and 1 Land of the Eternal Tianwei, which draws 2 cards if an effect monster is summoned while you control a non-effect monster. That's followed by 2 Terraforming and 1 Set Rotation. It's exceptionally easy through Metaverse and Sea Stealth Attack to port through Eternal Tianwei back into Pacifist, so it's a neat little trick I've included. For traps, we're on 3 Infinite Impermanence, 3 Phantasm Spiral Battle, I've finally become brave enough to cut power entirely, 3 Metaverse, 3 Sea Stealth Attack, 3 Summon Limit, 3 Tianwei Fist, and 2 Waterfall of Dragon Souls, which does absolutely everything for the deck, but is slow enough that I'm only playing it at 2. In the extra, we've got our targets for Fist's non-effect only Waking the Dragon effect, Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, and the extravagance board of 2 Unicorn, 2 Cerberus, 2 Phoenix, 2 Dragon Sage, which makes your non-effect monsters destroy cards, 3 Bare-Fisted Monk, which makes hands with just the dragons playable, and 2 Clara and Rushka. So with that, let's jump into the games. Our first match is up against an Isolde deck playing Synchros. This deck aims to use Isolde as a starter engine for a series of warrior-oriented synchro material like Doppel Warrior. I'm happy that a deck like this never took off in the TCG, but I miss decks relying on cards like Isolde, critical choke points that decks with interaction could interact with. We are going first, so the first thing we're going to do is activate Pot of Extravagance. We banish 6 cards from our extra deck and eat an Ash. That's fine because what we really want to resolve is this terraforming. We'll get a Pacifist, set 2, and pass it back to our opponent. Our opponent draws for turn, they're going to lead with a copy of Engage. This tells me that they don't aim to go into Sky Striker material. They'll get the token, I'll get a token of my own and add a copy of Phantasm Spiral Battle to hand. They'll normal summon a Marauding Captain, special summon a Doppel Warrior, and go into Isolde. We'll activate Infinite Transience to negate the first effect. They'll go into a second copy of Isolde, and before they can activate the second, we'll activate Battle. We draw for turn, we have a copy of Hollow, so we'll activate that now, sending a Vishuddha, and adding another TN to hand, then we'll activate Terraforming. One thing that this deck does differently than previous versions of the build is allows you to use Terraformings to flex into additional copies of advantage gaining material like Eternal TN. Our opponent's going to normal summon a copy of Rescue Ferret, I guess for intimidation purposes. We will attack it and pass it back. Our opponent draws for turn, thank god it's a starter. They're going to use its Neospace Connector for Aqua Dolphin, that triggers Eternal TN. We'll activate SSA to get ourselves back a Pacifist, then we'll banish the token so we get another one and another copy of Battle. They'll pass it back to us, we'll activate Battle on the back row, and the game should be over from this position. In main phase 1, we'll activate Extravagance, draw 2 cards, and they'll concede. Our second game is up against Trickstar, and while this game goes particularly well, I want to caution you, had we gone second, we would have lost to the Drolenlock loop. We're going first, however, so we'll go ahead and activate Pacifist the Phantasm City, set 4, and pass it back to our opponent. Now that's optimal. Our opponent's going to start by activating Trickstar Light Stage, getting a Caro Bean. That gets us a token and our final copy of Phantasm Spiral Battle. They'll use Candina to get a copy of Licorice, activate 1 for 1 and chain Licorice. Bad news for them, that means summon limit is all the way on and will be negating this 1 for 1. That gives them a Licorice, they'll set 1 card and pass it back. We'll destroy it in end phase because I don't want to get Drolenlock looped. In draw phase, we'll go ahead and activate Sea Stealth Attack so we can activate this copy of Pot of Extravagance in our M1. We'll do just that, take a fair amount of damage for doing so. We find a couple of cards we don't need. We'll attack into this copy of Licorice, set 1, and pass it back. Opponent draws for turn, they'll activate Reincarnation to bring back Licoricica, normal summon a Candina for a copy of Lilybell, activate Light Stage on our set card, which we will chain, its Waterfall of Dragon Souls, we'll get a Vishuddha, and take a couple of points of damage in the process. That's 400 for the Licoricica and for the Candina, since we activated Waterfall, they'll pass it back. Remember, they are still under summon limit, which is mattering a lot here. We'll go ahead and attack into one of their monsters, and then set 1 card, activate Phantasm Spiral Battle on the other, use Terraforming to go into Land of Eternal, and pass it back. Our opponent draws for turn. They're going to start by normal summoning a copy of Lilybell, then going into Bloom. We'll draw 2, and they'll concede. Alright, so it's time for game 3, and you know what that means, a best of 3 versus meta. Our opponent's on Thunder Dragon, which is terrible news for us. It's one of the aforementioned sticky decks that makes our life miserable. Thankfully, we are going first, so maybe we'll be able to deal with it. We'll start by activating Pot of Extravagance, drawing 2 cards off the top of our deck, and what do we find but, relevant stuff. We don't have access to a normal monster, so we're going to go ahead and go into the associated Tian non-effect monster before setting the field, activating Hollow, and passing. Our opponent's going to lead with a Snack that draws us 2 cards. They'll activate Eclipse's effect for Levianeer. We will port out into a copy of Pacifist. They'll activate the effect of Phantom Skyblaster, which we have to negate, or we basically immediately lose, and unfortunately we found ourselves in a precarious position. While they pop off with Reproducus and eventually Summon Sorceress, we have access to Interruption that we can't use because the Tianwei Link monster is not normal. It's non-effect, which is great for the Tianwei half of the deck, but it's not normal, which means these battles are stranded in our hand. As a result, we're going to have to deal with a multitude of very powerful monsters. Our opponent eventually adds Chaos Dragon back to hand and is able to wipe the entirety of our board. They attack directly for 28. We'll reduce the attack of this copy of Saruya, but it's still more than enough to overwhelm us. Well, that was frustrating, but at the very least showcases the critical nombo that exists between these two strategies. The Tianwei cards don't exactly help the pacifist ones. While the Phantasm Spiral cards are a perfect fit for the Tianwei half of the deck, the Tianwei half of the deck does lock out critical interaction like Phantasm Spiral Battle. You have to be careful about how greedy you are when going for hollows. We're going first once again, and thank God Extravagance keeps showing up in our opener. We're going to start by activating it. We draw 2 cards. Well, those are pretty good. We're going to go ahead and normal summon a copy of Mystery Shell to get another copy of Battle to hand and pass it back to our opponent. Our opponent's going to start with a Light of Sekka, and wow, we have very few targets for Fist, but that is one of them. They'll then go into a Pankratops and special summon a copy of Snek. We'll activate Pacifist in response. They'll activate Pankratops in response, and we, responding to that, will activate Summon Limit. This forces our opponent to pass back. We unfortunately don't have the capacity to OTK, but we do have a Terraforming, netting us another copy of Pacifist. We'll attack into this copy of Snek, go to end phase, and hope for the best. Our opponent's going to start by activating the effect of Light of Sekka, shuffling back a copy of Jackalope. We get a Pacifist token and a Battle to hand. They'll activate Thunder Dragon, and oh god, there's Leviosa. We'll go ahead and activate Phantasm Spiral Battle, but our back row is not long for this world. They'll go into a copy of Jackalope, a copy of Light of Sekka off the Jackalope, and of course Phantasm Sky Blaster. They'll then go into Skulldet, will destroy it, but of course they still get to draw cards. They will do just that, then activate the effect of Thunder Dragon and Bolt Thunder Dragon to add a couple of cards to their hand, but they don't have anything they don't need to normal summon, so we have 1 turn to OTK once again. Again, we can't do it, so we're going to have to set a copy of Infinite Impermanence and hope that it's enough. Of course, there's no way it would be. They're going to activate Light of Sekka, go into Wyver Buster, activate the effect of Roar to get a copy of Dark from deck, activate Sky Blaster for about 18 tokens, before going into a copy of Reproducus, a copy of Elpie, yikes, and a copy of Black Dragon Collapse Serpent. That's going to make a Borreload Dragon and trigger a couple of Thunders in the graveyard. Afterwards, they're going to, what else? Use Avian Thunder Dragon for Roar, go into Super Bolt number 1, trigger the Diabolos in hand, use Borreload Dragon's effect, attack for 1500, attack for, well, not enough to get over the token, and therefore not enough to kill it. By negating the effect of Super Bolt, we can deal with it, but we'd have to draw something fantastic off the top to win this. Well, that's pretty good. We'll go ahead and activate Extravagance number 2, and we find a Summon Limit and another copy of Pacifist. Once we're already set up, there are a lot of dead cards in our deck, and this is one of them. It triggers, but we don't have any remaining copies of Battle, which means that our opponent is going to be able to pop off, use Phoenix to destroy our final set card, which we will chain in response, activate the effect of Eclipse Wyvern, which is enough for me. So we're back with the deck, and woof. There's a lot to think about. As always, let's do the pros and the cons. First, the pros. 1. It's better than Demise Pack by miles. Extravagance fills the same position as Demise for the most part, and access to a versatile suite of answers for different problematic monsters beats redundant cards that all lose to the same thing any day of the week. 2. The synergy is extremely pertinent. Even nombos like competing field spells feel like upside when you can take advantage of convenient interactions like Metaverse and Sea Stealth Attack. And 3. Every one of the pieces of the strategy fills in a weakness for the other. Pacifist searches recursion and interruption for Tian, and Tian insulates Pacifist against its most problematic answers. And the cons. 1. So it's an improvement over both Pacifist and Tian, but neither of those decks were really taking down regionals, were they? Pack would need a massive boost to become meta, and this isn't it. 2. The metagame isn't actually kind to this type of strategy. Ironically, these decks were much better when board building and FTK strategies were in vogue. A mediocre grinding deck is much less equipped to deal with better grinding strategies than it is to disassemble glass cannons. And 3, it actually still loses to the age-old pacifist counter. Play nothing and pass. If this strategy ever becomes meta, it'll be a matter of seconds before people realize the best out to the strategy is to just wait out the player with no offensive pressure. All in all, it's a great improvement to previous versions of the deck, but it won't be tier 0 anytime soon. Don't worry though, that won't keep me from trying. So that's that. I hope you all appreciated the 6 months I took off from making pacifist videos. It was hard, trust me, but somehow I'll persevere. If you want to see me play the decks I make on this show on stream, I'm on twitch.tv/mbtygo every Monday from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and if you want to see me play a specific deck or archetype on a future episode of this show, let me know in the comments section below and I'll do my best. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.